Hi, this is your instructional video over solving systems of equations, part B. We will be focusing on the substitution method. So at the top of your notes, please make sure you write down the objective. How do I find a solution to a system of equations? The essential question for today is how do I solve for solutions to a linear function by the substitution method? Let's review what a system of equation is. A system of an equation is a set of equations. That means I can have one or more lines now where you are trying to find the one point of intersection, and that is called the solution. So remember in our previous video, we looked at two lines, and where they intersect, this is the solution that I'm looking for. Remember, we talked about in our previous video how we look at the substitution method. Let's look at the section that we're supposed to look at.
The classroom, variables on the stove, equations getting heated, systems getting sold. Winner is a teacher, math overload. I've been using substitution since I was 13 years old. Get X and Y alone, all them expressions what you get, all them lock it up, block it up, that's the way you chalk it up. Pardon me, I'm teaching up, the pressure's up. Check it, bruh, plug this in with us like a cord in a socket. One variable now is all you have, solve it up, do the math. Find its value, take it back to other variables what you have. Time and time again when I'm solving systems, Dumbs says it best, just solve, baby, solve. All I do is solve.
Alright, so let's review before we dig into how do we actually find the substitution. So what was the first method? Remember, we talked about the first method was graphing. So when the two equations are easy to graph, I go ahead and I graph it, and I find where the 2 points meet or crisscross. So now the second method is called substitution. So now let's look at the lyrics that we looked at, and we will now follow the steps to the lyrics. That way we can find the answer to our substitution method. Alright, so let's remember back. Step 1, we get x or y alone. So you're looking for either x equals or you're looking at y equals. Then step 2, you box it up, you chalk it up, you plug it in like a cord in a socket. So we'll look at that in just a second. We're going to box step 1, and then we're going to plug it in to the second equation. Step 3, once you have one variable, all you have to do is find its pair. So what you're looking for is, if you have the answer for x, then you're going to look for its pair, and you're looking for the letter y. If you have the letter y, then you're going to plug it back into the original, and then you're going to find the x. So how do you find the other value? Again, you plug it in. You plug it in and you solve. Alright, so let's follow these steps and look at the 4 examples that we have. Alright, step 1. Y equals 2x, and I now have x plus y equals 12. Now this gets harder, and I can't use method 1 of graphing. So now I'm going to use the steps for substitution. Step 1, we're going to get x and y alone. So notice that my first equation here, I have y alone. I have y equals. So step 2, we're going to box it up. We're going to chalk it up. So I'm going to highlight this, and we're going to plug this equation into the second equation, and that's why it's called substitution. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the second equation, and every time I see the letter y, I'm going to substitute it with my first equation. So now I'm just going to rewrite my original equation of my second one, the one that's not boxed. So I have x plus, now instead of the letter y, I'm going to look at what I have highlighted. I have 2x equals y. So instead of putting the letter y down, I'm going to plug this in like a cord in a socket. So then now I'm going to replace the y with 2x. This is what substitution means. I am substituting the first one into the second one. And now I'm going to copy everything else down. And now, folks, this is just Algebra 1 time. I'm going to combine like terms. So now I have x plus 2x equals 12. So now remember, my x has an invisible 1, so I can put the invisible 1 in. And now I can combine like terms. This would give me 3x equals 12. And how do I solve for x? That's right. I'm going to divide both sides by 3 so I can get my x alone. So now I have x equals 4. All right, so now I have the first equation, or excuse me, the first answer, x equals 4. Now I need to figure out what y is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this new box and we're going to plug it in to the first equation. So in my first equation that I originally had was y equals 2x. But now instead of using the letter x, I actually know the answer to x, which is 4. So now I'm just going to replace the x with 4. And now this is just regular math. 2 times 4 is 8. So y equals 8. So now remember, this is a solution. This is where I have two lines and they're going to crisscross at an actual point. Remember? So the actual point to this is I'm going to put both of these answers together. So my solution is at 4, 8. So if I were to graph this on a x-axis, y-axis, this dot right here would be where they crisscrossed at 4, 8. All right, let's look at example 2. In example 2, I have y equals negative x plus 5 and x minus 4y equals 10. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, step 1, get x or y alone. Oh, well, I do have my first one where y is alone. So step 2, I'm going to box it up. I'm going to chalk it up, which means I'm going to take my highlighter and highlight the part that I need. All right, so this is the part that I need. So now I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to now rewrite my second equation. I'm just going to copy everything else down until I get to the letter y. So now that I have y, I'm going to plug my first number, my first equation, into the letter y like a cord in a socket. So then now I'm going to put parentheses because now I'm going to replace the whole thing. So now I'm just going to copy my first equation, negative x plus 5. Close the parentheses, and then I'm going to keep copying my second equation. Nothing else changes. All right, so this is now Algebra 1 time. So we learned this first 6 weeks. So I'm going to bring down my x. Now I have parentheses here, so remember this is called distribution. So I'm going to distribute negative 4 times the invisible negative 1. So that's going to give me positive 4x. And now I'm going to distribute again. Negative 4 times positive 5, that will give me negative 20. All right, and then I'm going to copy the equal 10 down. All right, so now I can combine like terms. I have my invisible 1 again. So I have 1x plus 4x because both of these have x's. That would give me 5x. Copy everything else down, and now I'm ready to find what x is going to equal. All right, so which two numbers don't have x's? That's right, 20 and 10. So I'm going to do the opposite of minus 20, which is plus 20. So then now this is my big fat 0 because that's gone. Bring down my 5x equals 30. And then now I'm just going to divide both sides by 5, and x is going to equal to 6. So this is my first answer, x equals 6. But now I need to go back to my first one to find out what y equals. All right, so then I'm going to take this answer and go back to my original box that I had. And then now I'm going to recopy it down. I have y equals negative. Now, instead of x, I'm going to now use the number 6. So negative 6, and then copy everything else down, plus 5. All right, so then now this really is negative 6 plus 5. When I put this in my calculator, y equals negative 1. So remember, this is actually a solution. So this is actually a point. So this is the point where both of the lines meet. And they both meet at 6, negative 1. That's my solution. Let's look at example 3. Example 3 is a little bit more difficult because I don't have step 1 down. X and Y needs to be alone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the first equation, because this is actually easier. They're all positives, and I need to get my y alone. So what I'm going to do out to the side here is I'm going to use my Algebra 1 steps so that I get x or y alone. So I'm going to get y alone, so I'm going to subtract x from both sides. So remember, I can't put it underneath the 1 because x and 1 don't match. So now I have y equals 1 minus x. Now, I'm also going to rewrite it so I have it in the correct standard form, y equals negative x plus 1. And this is what I'm going to use. So now I have y alone. So now I'm going to box it up, chalk it up, and I'm going to plug it in like a cord in a socket. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my second equation and start copying everything down. So 2x minus. Now when I get to the y, I'm not going to write the letter y down because I have y alone. So now I have this part that I'm going to substitute in to where the y is, and I'll use parentheses, negative x plus 1. And then now I'm going to recopy everything else down. Alright, so this is just regular Algebra 1 time. So I'm going to copy down to 2x. Don't forget there's an invisible 1 in front of the parentheses. So this is negative 1 times negative 1, which is positive 1x. Then negative 1 times positive 1, which is negative 1. And then I'm going to copy everything else down. Alright, so then now I'm ready to combine my like terms. So 2x and 1x, they both have x's, so I'm going to combine my like terms. And now give me the two numbers that don't have x's. That's right, negative 1 and negative 2. So I'm going to combine those, bring down my 3x, and it equals negative 1. And divide both sides by 3. So my x value is going to be negative 1/3. Don't panic just because I have a fraction. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to now take this and I'm going to replace it to my original. But notice my original is all the way over here. So this is the part that I'm going to replace it. So I'm going to substitute it again. So I'm going to now rewrite my equation, y equals negative. But now instead of writing the letter x, I'm going to use the number that we got, negative 1/3. And then I'm going to copy everything else down, plus 1. Alright, so then this is going to give me a positive 1/3 plus 1, and so this is going to give me 4/3. Feel free to convert this to a decimal if you would like. So my solution, I'm going to put these two together because this is an actual point on my line. So this is where the two lines are going to crisscross at negative 1/3, 4/3.